Top Accolade Global News Updates. I am Soybifa Jackridge. Representatives from nearly 200 countries agreed at the COP28 climate summit on Wednesday to begin reducing global consumption of fossil fuels to avert the worst of climate change, a first-of-its-kind deal signaling the eventual end of the oil age. The deal, struck in Dubai after 2 weeks of hard-fought negotiations, was meant to send a powerful signal to investors and policymakers that the world is united in its desire to break with fossil fuels, something scientists say is the last best hope to stave off climate catastrophe. Several countries share the deal for accomplishing something exclusive in decades of climate talks. More than 100 countries had lobbied hard for strong language in the COP28 agreement to phase out oil, gas, and coal use, but came up against powerful opposition from the Saudi Arabia-led oil producer group OPEC, which argued that the world can slash emissions without shunning specific fuels. That battle pushed the summit a full day into overtime on Wednesday. Members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries together control nearly 80% of the world's proven oil reserves, along with about a third of global oil outputs, and their governments rely heavily on those revenues. Small climate-vulnerable island states, meanwhile, were among the most vocal supporters of phasing out fossil fuels and had the backing of huge oil and gas producers such as the United States, Canada, and Norway, along with the EU bloc and scores of other governments. A representative for the Alliance of Small Island States also addressed the plenary, complaining that the agreement had been gavelled before its delegates had arrived in the room and criticizing the text as unambitious. Israel faced growing diplomatic isolation in its war against Hamas as the United Nations demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, and US President Joe Biden told the longtime ally its indiscriminate bombing of civilians was hurting international support. After dire warning from UN officials about a deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the 193-member UN General Assembly on Tuesday passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire with three-quarters of member states voting in favor. The Palestinian Authority welcomed the resolution and urged countries to pressure Israel to comply. A Hamas official in exile, Izzat el-Reshkik, in a statement on Telegram, echoed that reaction, saying Israel should stop its aggression, genocide, and ethnic cleansing against our people. The US and Israel, which argue a ceasefire only benefits Hamas, voted against the measure along with 8 other countries. Before the UN votes, Israel's UN ambassador Gilad Erdan said, "A ceasefire means one thing and one thing only: ensuring the survival of Hamas, ensuring the survival of genocidal terrorists committed to the annihilation of Israel and Jews." Before the resolution, Biden said, Israel now has support from most of the world, including the US and European Union, for its fight against the Palestinian militant group Hamas. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, which traveled to Israel this week, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will visit the Middle East next week. Biden said Sullivan will emphasize the U.S. commitments to Israel, as well as the need to protect civilian lives in Gaza. The UN resolution is not binding but carries political weight, reflecting a global view on the war. The United States vetoed a similar call in the 15-member Security Council last week, but does not have a veto in the General Assembly. Tuesday's resolution got 153 votes in favor, 10 against, and 23 abstentions, in an indication of weakening support for Israel. The resolution passed by a wider margin than a similar UN measure in October, which got 121 votes in favor, 14 against, and 44 abstentions. Russia's second missile assault on Kyiv this week injured at least 53 people, damaging homes and children's hospital, Ukrainian officials said on Wednesday. As President Volodymyr Zelensky pleaded in Washington for more help for his country, the windows of residential apartment blocks were blown out and frightened residents streamed out onto the streets to assess the damage. Missiles debris blew a large crater in the ground and destroyed parked cars. Ukraine Ukraine's air defense system downed all 10 ballistic missiles aimed at the capital about 3 a.m. Ukraine's Air Force said on the Telegram, falling debris caused injuries and destruction in 4 of Kyiv's districts along the Dnipro River, which cuts through the capitals, officials said. 35 buildings were damaged according to the city's military administration. Ukraine's national police said 53 people, including 6 children, had been injured by the attack. 18 people had been hospitalized, it said in a social media post. Ukraine's Armed Forces General Staff identified the projectiles as Iskander-M ballistic missiles as well as S-400's extremely fast missiles intended for air defense, but which have also been used to hit ground targets. Windows and entrances were shattered by debris at a children's hospitals in Kyiv's Dnipropetrovsk district, but based on initial assessments, there wasn't casualties, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said on Telegram. Debris also hit several residential buildings in the Dnipropetrovsk district. The district's water supply was damaged. Kyiv's military administration chief Serhiy Popko said 17 people, including 7 children, were evacuated from a residential building in the Dnipropetrovsk district after debris hit building and nearly causing a fire. Both Moscow and Kyiv denied targeting civilians in the nearly 22 months long war that Russia launched against its neighbor in February 2022. The Air Force said that it also shot down all 10 Russian-launched attack drones over the Odessa region in Ukraine's south. Putin's payment regulator on Wednesday provisionally proposed a cap on cross-border interchange fees charged by MasterCard and Visa on transactions made between the UK and European single markets. The payment system regulator, PSR, said a cap would protect businesses from overpaying. The payment system regulator, PSR, said a cap would protect businesses from overpaying after it published interim findings of a market review on interchange fees charged since Brexit, when the bloc's long-standing cap ceased to apply in Britain. UK lawmakers had piled pressure on the PSR to consider reintroducing a cap in Britain, and the watchdog said last year it would conduct 2 market reviews, but that an outcome could take years. The PSR said the review focused on charges set by MasterCard and Visa as they account for 99% of debit and credit card payments in the UK. Under the proposals, the PSR would impose an initial time-limited cap of 0.2% on UK European Economic Area debit transactions and 0.3% on credit transactions. A lasting cap would then be imposed on once further analysis is carried out. These interchange rates apply to less than 2% of UK and payment European EEA cardholders buying online from a UK seller and reflect the fact that these transactions are more complex and carry far greater risks of fraud. The PSR is inviting feedback on the proposals until the end of January, with a final report due in the first quarter of 2024. A government-commissioned report last month said Britain needs a digital alternative to relying on Visa and MasterCard regardless of what the PSR does, echoing long-standing ambitions in the EU for a homegrown alternative to the American do that has yet to emerge. European Union lawmakers provisionally agreed on Wednesday on a bill aimed at giving workers and online companies such as Uber and Deliveroo employees benefits, which, if adopted, would be a global first. The new rules will prevent workers from being wrongfully classified as self-employed and therefore not eligible for benefits. By introducing presumptions of employment, meeting 2 out of 5 indicators of control or direction will trigger the assumption the worker is employed by the company. Currently, at least 5.5 million persons performing platform work may be wrongly classified as self-employed and are missing out on important labor and social protection rights. European Parliament said in a statement the rules were originally announced in late 2021 and, if adopted, will be a global first. They are part of a raft of legislation intended to ensure a level playing field between online and traditional businesses. The proposals had been previously criticized by delivery platforms Europe, whose members are both Deliveroo, Delivery Hero, Glovo, Uber, and Wolt. The rules will also reduce the use of algorithms in decision making, with human oversight required over issues such as the suspension of a worker's account or dismissal. It will also give gig workers more insight algorithms used by online companies work and how their behavior affects decision taking by the systems. Under the new rules, digital platform will also be unable to trick the system by using employment intermediaries, as workers performing the service via an intermediary will need to benefit from the same level of protection as those employed directly. The agreed text will now have to be formally adopted by the European Parliament and the Council to enter into force. That is the size of top accolade global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Wednesday.